Hunger is an affront to God. This God who provided abundant food in the Garden of Eden, who led Jacob and his family from famine into Egypt where there was food, who sent down manna to the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness and fed thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish. This is the God who comes to us in a meal, in bread and wine, who invites everyone to the table, where there is always enough room and enough food. Just as Jesus said to his disciples facing those hungry crowds, "You give them something to eat." God sends us out from this meal to be partners with Christ so that all may be fed. Today we are observing an End Hunger Sunday, an observance that ELCA World Hunger suggests congregations hold periodically to focus on our call to feed the hungry. The good news is that global hunger has declined by 39% in the past 25 years. But undernutrition still affects 800 million people, or 1 in 9, and annually causes the death of 3 million children. This is unacceptable, especially to people of a faith centered on resurrection and life. In our nation, 1 in 7 people live in households that struggle to put food on the table. 20% of our children are at risk for hunger. This too is unacceptable when we are called to serve our neighbor and to care for the vulnerable. How can we make a difference? Scarcity of food is not the basic problem. Experts tell us that the earth produces enough food to provide everyone on the planet with 2,700 calories every day, which is more than enough for the average adult. The problem of hunger is one of access. In some areas of the world, there is a shortage of food because of a natural disaster like a drought, or the disruption of conflict and war, or the seasonal growing pattern when food becomes scarce between harvests. But the most significant cause of hunger is poverty. Simply not having enough money to buy food or to raise it. So what are some of the ways in which we can give people greater access to food? One thing we can do is to support our local food pantries and soup kitchens by donating food, money, or even a few hours of our time. Through Emmanuel, we support the Pleasantville Interfaith Food Pantry, but you may wish to also support one in your community. According to the Food Bank for Westchester, 1 in 5 Westchester County residents lives with some sort of food insecurity throughout the year. About half of them seek help from a food pantry or meal program regularly. Many are working poor or seniors whose income isn't enough to meet all of the expenses of rent, clothing, childcare, transportation, medications, etc. Others are disabled, and others have been laid off and can't find work. These people need immediate access to food, which we can help provide. But we cannot food bank or soup kitchen our way out of hunger because it does not address its root cause, poverty. It's a bit like keeping an ambulance at the bottom of a cliff to treat those who fall off rather than to put up a fence or a wall to prevent people from falling. So we need to find a way to help people out of poverty. Projects that encourage sustainable development through education and job training opportunities, improving agricultural methods of production for small farmers, providing microloans that enable people to start cottage industries that will bring in extra income, building wells that makes it easier for people to have access to water so that people will have a source of water for crops, and girls and women can spend more of their time in school or working because they no longer need to spend hours carrying water for miles. And supporting health programs that keep people healthy and productive have proven to be effective ways of lifting people from poverty, especially in the developing world. ELCA World Hunger, working with congregations and social agencies domestically through its Domestic Hunger Grants program, and with partners on the ground like Lutheran World Relief and Lutheran World Federation internationally, has been a master at helping improve people's lives by reducing poverty. Through our gifts to ELCA World Hunger, we become part of this important work. Addressing poverty and its impact also requires changing public policies and systems in order to protect the most vulnerable. which in turn requires advocacy with elected leaders with and on behalf of those who are in need. Federal nutrition programs like SNAP, formerly food stamps, school meals, and WIC, a food program for mothers, infants, and children, help vulnerable people obtain greater access to food. If churches and private charities were to carry this full burden, they would need to increase their efforts by 20 times. Hungry people need these federal programs to survive. Our advocacy in the past has strengthened these programs and protected them from federal budget cuts. This year, both ELCA Advocacy and Bread for the World are encouraging people to urge their representatives in Congress to provide additional funding for meals for children after school and during summer breaks. For every 6 low-income children who receive a free or reduced price lunch at school, only about half also get a school breakfast, and only 1 also gets a meal during the summer months. In other words, many children are probably missing some meals every day. Poor nutrition in childhood can lead to all sorts of chronic problems, from the inability to focus and learn in school to cognitive and behavioral issues, to increased risk of osteoporosis and type 2 diabetes later on in life. So our action is important. Unlike past years when we wrote letters or signed pre-printed ones, both Bread for the World and ELCA Advocacy have recognized the effectiveness of emails, which are especially important now because Congress is expected to vote on these childhood nutrition issues this month. The handout, which I hope you received with today's bulletin, but if you didn't, it's on the narthex table, has specific information about supporting the food pantry, about how to give to ELCA World Hunger, and for advocating for legislation to address hunger issues, which through this year will, instead of an offering of letters, will be an offering of emails from your home computer. There's also an ELCA fact sheet on combating child hunger to give you some background information. That's also on the narthex table. I hope that at least one of these opportunities to exercise discipleship and respond to Christ's call to feed the hungry will speak to your heart, and you will act. It is all God's work.